So you want to learn Mandarin, but you've probably heard it's like climbing Mount Everest, right? The tones, the thousands of characters, it just feels impossible. But what if I told you there's a clear path to the summit? Today, we're breaking down a solid 20-month plan to take you from absolute zero all the way to fluency.
Okay, let's just get this out of the way. Is Mandarin really the monster everyone says it is? I mean, you hear so much about how difficult it is that it's easy to feel defeated before you even start. Is that climb really as steep as they say?
Well, here's a little secret that might surprise you. That scary reputation, it's kind of overblown. As one expert puts it, Chinese is not as hard as you think. They just wanted to scare you. And honestly, that's the big takeaway here. With the right roadmap and the right tools, this mountain is absolutely climbable.
So here's our roadmap for the climb. First, we're going to size up the journey, the Mandarin Mountain. Then, we'll spend some real time laying the foundation. After that, we'll tackle the beginner levels, make that big intermediate leap, and finally, reach the peak. And we'll wrap it all up with a daily blueprint you can literally start using today.
The plan we're looking at is a real, honest-to-goodness 20-month journey. It's designed to take you from a complete beginner, like knowing absolutely nothing, all the way to advanced fluency. We're going to use the HSK levels as our guideposts, which are the official proficiency standards for Mandarin. Yeah, it's going to take some discipline, but the path is super clear.
So, what are these HSK levels? Think of them as trail markers on our hike up the mountain. They give us a structured path with really clear milestones. You start at level 1, which is like base camp, and you work your way all the way up to level 6 at the summit. It's how we're going to measure our progress.
All right, now for what is, I would argue, the most critical part of this entire journey, your first month. You know, it's like building a pyramid. If that base isn't solid, nothing you put on top is going to stand for very long. So this first month is all about making sure our foundation is rock solid for everything to come.
To get started, you got to understand the two core pieces of the language. On one hand, you've got Pinyin. That's our secret weapon, really. It lets us figure out the sounds of Mandarin using the alphabet we already know. And on the other hand, you've got Hanzi, the actual characters. This brings us to a golden rule of this whole plan. Master the sound before you even try to tackle the symbol.
So, how in the world do we tackle thousands of characters? Well, you don't. You learn their building blocks, which are called radicals. Seriously, think of them like Lego bricks. And here's the aha moment. These radicals often give you clues about a character's meaning. For example, if you see the little 3-dot water radical on the left side of a character, you can bet it has something to do with liquid. It shows up in the character for river and the one for lake. See? It's a system, not just a bunch of random scribbles.
So, here's your mission for that first month. Week 1 is all about sound, nailing down Pinyin and those 4 tones. Then, for the next 2 weeks, you're going to dive into those Lego blocks, learning the 55 most common radicals. By week 4, you're putting it all together and you're ready to start building actual words.
Okay, foundation is set. Now we can start building the first few levels of our pyramid. That's HSK 1 through 3. This is where we turn those fundamental sounds and building blocks into vocabulary and, real simple conversations. This is where it gets fun.
And just to show you how doable this first step is, HSK Level 1 only requires 150 words. That's it. If you learn just 10 new words a day, which is a totally manageable goal, you can crush the entire first level in about 2 weeks. The momentum really starts to build here.
So what does 10 words a day actually look like in practice? It's a simple, repeatable loop. You spend a little time writing the new characters to build up that muscle memory. Then you review them with flashcards to really lock them in. Then you practice hearing them and saying them out loud. And finally, you learn one tiny grammar point. That's it. Consistency is everything.
And to help you with that daily loop, here's a little starter toolkit. You've got your main textbook for structure, an apt practice writing, a really powerful dictionary for quick lookups, and a great podcast for listening. Seriously, you don't need to get lost in a million different resources. These are the essentials to get you going.
All right, once you've built those beginner levels, it's time for the intermediate leap. And this is a huge transition point. The training wheels come off. Your goal is no longer just about learning about the language from textbooks. It's about starting to live in the language through immersion. This is really what separates the learners who get stuck from the ones who actually reach fluency. So what's the goal of this leap? It's all about practical, real-world fluency. We're talking about being able to chat about all sorts of different topics, to get the jokes, to follow along with conversations, and to just handle everyday situations with native speakers without it being a big deal. This is where the language truly comes alive.
To get there, you've got to change what you consume. Start with sitcoms, because they use repetitive conversational language in everyday situations. It's perfect. Then you can graduate to intermediate podcasts that talk about more interesting topics. And definitely find YouTubers who make content for native speakers on subjects you already love, like cooking or makeup. That way, it stops feeling like studying and starts feeling like entertainment.
And that brings us to the final ascent, HSK 6 and beyond. This is the peak of our mountain. At this advanced stage, you can pretty much understand everything you hear or read. Your focus shifts from learning to just consuming. You're diving into complex, nuanced media that's made for and by native speakers.
Now here's a really cool insight that might blow your mind. The hardest part of learning Mandarin is actually the beginning. It's building that foundation from absolutely nothing. By the time you get to this advanced stage, the internal logic of the language is already clear in your head. You're not building from scratch anymore. You're just adding decorations to a solid existing framework. It genuinely feels easier.
And the rewards at this level? They're incredible. You unlock a whole new world of content. You can appreciate the poetic language in documentaries, you can follow the lightning-fast arguments in debate shows, and, for the ultimate test, you can actually understand the cultural references and wordplay in stand-up comedy. That is true fluency.
So, we've climbed the entire mountain. Now, let's bring it all back down to earth with a single actionable blueprint that you can use every single day, no matter what level you're at right now.
This is it. This is the daily learning loop that powers this whole 20-month journey. Learn and write, review, listen, speak, and check a grammar point. This is the engine of your progress. It's simple, it's sustainable, and if you stick with it, it is incredibly effective.
And as you get started on this journey, just remember this one last piece of advice. Learning a language is not a race to the finish line. It's all about consistency and patience. Small, steady steps every single day will get you to the summit way more effectively than short, intense sprints that just lead to burnout. The journey to the top of the mountain starts with one single, deliberate step. So the only question left is, what's the first block you're going to lay today? Are you going to learn the 4 tones, or maybe your very first radical? Whatever it is, the climb begins now. Thanks for joining this breakdown.